Hi, welcome to Nini Presents. It's late, it's dark, so we're gonna watch something scary. Come on, come on. Push play.
How you doing? I'm Callan and this is Slapped Ham. The following list is about 10 real events that inspired some of the best, most notorious
Oh,
episodes of The X-Files,
I had no idea. I've totally forgotten which video I pushed.
demonstrating that truth is indeed often stranger than fiction. And before we get into it, remember to hit that subscribe button for more awesome, creepy content just like this. This disturbing episode depicts Scully and Mulder delving into the case of Dwayne Barry, a
I don't know about you. I loved this show when I was a kid. Absolutely loved this show. It was one of the most interesting things ever, and it was one show that my mom, one of the shows, there were a couple actually, that my mom would sit down and actually watch with us. And I loved that because my mom's like real analytical. She loves just thinking about things, and she's always very smart and matter of fact and sees things how they are. So it was fun watching this with her. She always seemed to make sense of things. Anyways, this is going to be a good one. I can tell. I loved this show.
violent mental patient who believes that he's been repeatedly abducted by aliens. During her investigation, Scully discovers that Barry has brain damage as a result of a gunshot to the head, leading to
Oh,
him becoming a pathological liar with psychopathic tendencies. Some of the
jeez.
aspects of this episode are based on the case of Phineas Gage, a 25-year-old railroad worker in Cavendish, Vermont. Gage
He had one eye straight open and one eye closed like it was no problem.
suffered a severe brain injury after a 13-pound metal bar used to tamp sand on top of an explosive charge caused a spark that shot the bar through his face and skull.
What?
Until his injury, Gage had been an even-tempered individual, but his personality changed drastically after.
Now I feel like a total asshole for what I said. Oh my god. Oh my god. That spike was in his head? Oh my god. The hell were you doing?
The accident. He showed signs of aggression and fitfulness and was suddenly prone to the use of disturbing profanity, all behaviours that hadn't been demonstrated in the past. It was believed that this change in his behaviours was due to the severe damage to his frontal lobe as a result of the injury. Gage's case was believed to be the first to definitively prove that brain injuries can produce marked personality changes.
Wow. Huh.
While most of the X-Files episodes centre on the paranormal or conspiratorial, Irresistible takes a different approach with the introduction of Donnie Pfaster, a budding serial killer who crosses paths with Scully and Mulder. After losing his job as an assistant funeral director for taking a lock of hair from a dead woman, Pfaster moves on to
Ew.
exhuming dead bodies to remove their hair and fingernail clippings
Ew.
to add to his collection of trophies.
Ew.
Pfaster eventually resorts to murder to satisfy his macabre desires. As the episode progresses, Pfaster seems to change in appearance, further frightening his victims. Donnie Pfaster was strongly based on the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, who committed his first murder
Oh,
in 1978 at the age of 18.
I
He
remember
was
him.
finally captured in July 1991, confessing to have murdered 16 young men since 1978. According to his surviving victims, Dahmer's appearance seemed to change during the course of their captivity, adding to his twisted creep factor.
Wow.
In
I did
space,
not know
Scully and
that.
Mulder visit NASA to investigate the possibility of shuttle sabotage.
Okay. I did not know that about the Jeffrey Dahmer case. That his surviving victims said that his features changed. I do believe them. I absolutely believe them. And I don't think that's just because they were under duress, that maybe they all, that's a common factor when you're under a high stress, high anxiety situation that, a person's face will seem different. Of course, they will a little bit because they're angry and the muscles in their faces are bulging out more. There are cases where a person's, I mean, they will look like someone different. Same body, different person. I know that's real. I know for sure that's real because I've seen that. And when I saw it, I was so weirded out. I kind of didn't know what to do. I'm shivering. It's kind of cold out here. God. Oh, I thought I had two sweaters on. Minute there, I thought I was losing my touch. Good Lord, it's cold. Give me a second. I'll warm myself up. I'll shiver a little bit. Ugh, crap. Now I don't remember what the hell I was talking about because I was so cold. All of a sudden, I got so cold. Give me one moment. I'm going to pause and figure out what it was. Haha, I remember Changing Faces. I had seen it. Yes, I saw it. And I saw it happen in someone who suffered from or suffers from, well, formerly was called multiple personality syndrome, but I think now it's called dissociative identity disorder. And this person's features would change, and the way that they would walk would change, the way that they would speak would change, certain mannerisms would change. Mainly it was the walk, but there was one particular, I don't know if you call it personality or expression of themselves, whatever. One particular one that when it would come out, this person would take on extremely childlike qualities in their face. And it was the damnedest thing to see. But that's what would happen because this personality I judged to be around 7 to 8 years old. That would come through 7 to 8 years old. And it was just the freakiest thing that you ever did see. So when these people are talking about, this guy's face changed, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah, I believe him.
Sabotage, resulting in an aborted launch. Another launch is scheduled, and initially it seems to be a success. But contact with the shuttle is soon lost, and the shuttle crew find themselves in danger of incineration by the sun.
Oh,
It's soon revealed
that's a
that
bad way to
Gemini
go.
astronaut Colonel Marcus Belt is keeping secrets. During a 1977 mission, he had a strange encounter with the face on Mars. Now he's being influenced by an astral presence that is apparently determined to see the destruction of the shuttle mission, along with the crew and the NASA program itself. In the end, Belt leaps from a window in an attempt to free himself of the possessing force. Chris
Mm.
Carter, the creator of the series, was inspired to write this episode after reading news articles about the face on Mars, as well as pareidolia, where the mind perceives a familiar image from random.
You guys really think that's a face? I mean, I'm wondering, I'm curious. Or is that just coincidence that those depressions and lines are where they are, and it just happens to look like a face? I mean, coincidences happen. One hell of a coincidence. I'm just wondering, what do y'all think?
Patterns. Carter also capitalized on the disappearance of the Mars Observer, which occurred around the same time this episode was in production in
Hmm.
August 1993. In this episode, a serial killer has the uncanny ability to project images of his darkest fantasies onto undeveloped film. Scully and Mulder are assigned to the case after photos developed at a
What?
pharmacy reveal a young woman screaming surrounded by a distorted background. While searching the killer's apartment, Mulder finds a camera that repeatedly produces the same image of the young woman seen earlier at the pharmacy, leading Mulder to the conclusion that the killer is somehow projecting his desires onto the film. Two
Hmm.
different individuals were the
It's
basis
a
for this
weird
episode of
idea.
The X-Files.
Ugh, gives me
In the
creeps.
1960s, Ted Sirius, a Chicago hotel worker, developed a talent for photography, a unique ability to project mental images onto film by concentrated thought. His ability rekindled interest in paranormal photography due to the fact that he used Polaroid film, whereas others who claimed to have the ability used film and procedures that were both complicated and easily manipulated. Mass murderer Howard Unruh was the
Wow.
other individual who was the inspiration for this episode. On September 6, 1949, 28-year-old Unruh went on a killing spree dubbed the Walk of Death, killing 13 individuals and injuring 3 others before being apprehended by the police. His reasons for the killings involved personal grudges that he held against his neighbours and local shop owners. Unruh is generally considered to be one of the first lone wolf mass murderers that have led up to the workplace and school shooters that we see on the news today.
Wow.
After a Marine drives his car into a tree committing
This is really, really interesting stuff. So all these things happened, and they wrote these episodes. Some of the episodes I do remember, and they don't seem all that much like the case. I mean, there's like a few facts here and there that might be similar, but they're not really that similar. But there's a couple in there that, my God, those were based on real things.
supposed suicide while working at a Haitian refugee camp, Scully and Mulder head to Haiti where they soon discover rumours that the detainees are being abused by the camp commander. As they dig deeper, suggestions of curses and voodoo surface, with hints that the government may be at the root of it all. 2 articles about higher suicide rates amongst military personnel posted in Haiti inspired Howard Gordon to write this episode. A 1994 article stated that 3 soldiers had committed suicide over a 3-week period, with
What?
morale, living conditions, and native reception all being named as possible issues for higher suicide rates.
My
It was
God.
determined that the suicide rate was 15 times the US national average, and the assignment seems to have had an unusually negative effect on the soldiers stationed there, in comparison to other locations that are potentially more hostile.
I had
When a
no
high-speed
idea.
car chase ends in Vicky Crump's head exploding and her husband being escorted to the hospital in handcuffs, Scully and Mulder travel to Nevada to investigate. Once there, Mulder finds himself taken hostage by Patrick Crump, a desperate man determined to head west at high speeds to alleviate the pain in his head and prevent it from exploding just as his
Hey,
wife's did.
that's
It's left to Scully to find a
that's the Breaking Bad guy.
solution that will save her partner, and she soon discovers that Crump is the victim of a brainwave experiment that can lead to intense inner ear pressure and fatality if he fails to travel towards the Pacific coast. The inspiration for this episode comes
What?
from 2 different government programs. Project ELF, a US Navy experiment involving long waves, and Project HARP, a US Army experiment involving electromagnetic radiation in the ionosphere. While the government claims that both HARP and ELF are for research purposes with thoughts towards better communication,
You don't think any of that has any effect on people? Just saying.
conspiracy theorists believe the real purpose of these projects are more sinister, with the creation of new and deadlier weapons being the real motive behind the expensive projects. After receiving a tip that a religious cult leader is caching weapons and abusing children, a raid is staged at the Temple of the Seven Stars, resulting in the arrest of cult leader Vernon Ephesian, along with his wife Melissa.
Sounds like that Branch Davidian cult with the David Koresh, except, well, a lot of people died in that one. I was in the military when that happened, and my unit was in Saudi Arabia at the time. And I remember turning on CNN and seeing that the ATF, I think it was, had gone forward into the compound, and the building was on fire. And I kept thinking, my God, all those people in there, all those people in there, they were just firing and shooting and going in with the tank. They knew there were kids in there. Dumbasses. And of course, it ended in tragedy. Anyways, I wonder if that's what they're talking
And
about here.
several other followers. Because they can only be held for so long without definitive proof, Ephesian and his followers are released, but another search of the compound for weapons is planned. Knowing that he won't be able to withstand further police interference, Ephesian instructs his men to open fire on the investigating agents, while he and the rest of the cult members drink poison to evade capture. Two different cults were the inspiration for this episode.
And I bet you the other one was the one, oh, the Jim Jones, down in Guyana. The People's, is it the People's Temple? Is it the People's Temple? I think it might be.
The Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventists of Waco, Texas gained
Called it.
notoriety in 1993 when they and their leader, David Koresh, engaged in a 2-month standoff that ended in the death of Koresh and 82 of his followers. The Jonestown Massacre was also a source of inspiration for this
Yep,
episode.
Jonestown.
On
That's what the
November
name of it was.
18th, 1978, Jim Jones ordered his followers to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid in a South American jungle community, after Congressman Leo Ryan visited the compound to evaluate the welfare of Jones's followers.
And I think that congressman was like the first congressman to die in the line of duty, either ever or in so many years. But he was the first one to die, to be assassinated or murdered like that in the line of duty.
Those who refused to drink the poison were later shot. 909 people died in total. Home gained a lot of notoriety due to the fact it was the first episode of The X-Files to receive a viewer discretion warning due to the content
Really?
that included incest and abuse. The discovery of a severely deformed baby in Pennsylvania soon leads Scully and Mulder to the Peacock brothers, who are found living in squalid conditions without even the basic amenities such as electricity and running water. Initially, it's thought that the brothers had kidnapped a woman to father a child, but eventually Scully and Mulder find there's evidence of incest in the family that involves the mother of the Peacock clan.
What?
Much of this episode was influenced by the story of the Ward brothers, 4 illiterate brothers who lived on a farm near Syracuse, New York. The Ward brothers lived in unbelievable squalor and were awkward in their behaviour, demonstrating very little in the way of social skills. In 1990, Delbert Ward was accused of killing his brother William while he was sleeping. He was later acquitted due to a lack of evidence. Lucy Householder was kidnapped by a deranged man and held
Wow.
captive in darkness for 5 years before making her escape. Several years later, Scully and Mulder investigate the kidnapping of Amy Jacobs, a young teenager who was kidnapped from her bed much as Lucy had been. During the course of the investigation, it comes to Mulder's attention that while at work, Lucy collapsed and suffered from a nosebleed at the same time that Amy was kidnapped. While Scully thinks that Lucy may have been involved in the kidnapping, especially after it's determined that her nosebleed consisted of an additional blood type that matches Amy's. Mulder is convinced of the
Oh,
woman's innocence and believes that she can help them to find the missing girl.
I forget how good this show was. My God, I gotta go back and watch all the episodes now.
Lucy begins to display spontaneous injuries that coincide with the injuries that Amy is receiving from her kidnapper. It's determined that a psychic link between the two has developed. Ultimately, Lucy gives her life in order to save Amy, an act facilitated by the psychic bond that they shared. This episode was heavily influenced by the kidnapping of 12-year-old Polly Klaas, whose
Oh,
kidnapping and murder were a primary news topic when the episode aired.
I
On
remember
October
that.
1st, 1993, Richard Allen Davies entered Polly's bedroom where she was having a slumber party and carried her away at knife point after tying up her 2 friends and placing pillowcases over their heads. Later that evening, a call was made to 911 that a vehicle was stuck in a ditch about 20 miles north of Petaluma, California, where Polly was kidnapped. Deputies investigated the call, not knowing about the kidnapping. Davis was the driver of the vehicle. After searching the car and running his license, a tow truck was called and Davis was free to go. On November
You are kidding me. God, that's awful. He was right there. He was right freaking there. I mean, who knows? Maybe he unfortunately already done, but he did. But if he hadn't, Jesus, he was right there. right there.
The 28th, 1993, the owner of the property where Davis had been stuck found scraps of clothing that matched items that Polly was wearing at the time of the kidnapping, which eventually led to the arrest of Davis. On 4th, he confessed to kidnapping and strangling Polly and led police investigators to the shallow grave where he buried her. It's believed that Davis killed Polly and hid her body in the woods near the ditch where his truck was stuck. He later returned to retrieve the body after the deputies had left. Before we get to that number one spot and take a look at a truly bizarre case involving poisonous blood, remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on channel notifications. That
Some of
way
the
you'll be up
things
to date
people
with all
do
the
to each
latest
other.
content on our channel.
Well, all of the things people do to each other, really. Hell.
Scully and Mulder investigate the case of Dr. William Sakare, a man who appears to have bled green blood after being shot by the police before disappearing without any other trace. Later, when Sakare is picked up by an ambulance, a poisonous gas is released from his body when paramedics attempt to insert a needle into his chest. It's later determined that Sakare is actually a human-alien hybrid whose blood is toxic to humans. The scene involving the release of poisonous gas from Dr. Sakare was directly inspired by the case of Gloria Ramirez. In February 1994, 31-year-old Ramirez was
I remember this case. I do remember this case.
rushed to a California hospital due to the effects of late-stage cervical cancer.
They had to like evacuate parts of the hospital. I mean, it was that bad.
It was noted that her skin had an odd oily sheen, and when her blood was drawn, small particles were seen floating in it. Ramirez also had a fruity, garlicky odour coming from her mouth, and her blood gave off a strong smell of ammonia. Soon after drawing her blood, one nurse fainted while another developed breathing issues. Another nurse also fainted and later awoke without the ability to move her arms or legs. 6 individuals had health issues attributed to working on Ramirez, some
That's
requiring
crazy.
hospitalization. Ramirez died a short time later due to her cancer. It was eventually speculated that Ramirez had been using dimethyl sulfoxide as a treatment for her cancer. Defibrillation that she received could have converted it to dimethyl sulfate, which would have been toxic to those exposed to it. While this theory is the most popular one, it's never been definitively proven.
Of all the things, of all the little things to happen to come together in one tragic moment, that is some craziness going on.
Well, that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for watching. Now, in the
That
comments section below, let us know if you're an X-Files fan from way back in the day and which was your favourite episode.
outstanding.
If you're new to our channel and enjoying what you see, slap that upward
Yes,
facing thumb. It really helps us out. And that's it for me. I'll see you all next time. Pew!
outstanding video. I hope my computer recorded this correctly because that was a good video.